Woo. Hello, everyone. Happy Pride, everyone. Let's see. Today, I will be joined by Miss Ivory Aquino, Filipino-American actress, that I had the pleasure to work with on an amazing project we shot in 2016 called When We Rise by Dustin Lance Black, where she played the part of Cecilia Chung, the transgender activist. And I'm super excited about this. I love Ivory. Let's see. Okay. We immediately clicked. We immediately connected when we met in Vancouver, where we shot the show. And I just think that she's such a bright light and talented woman, and I've learned a lot being her friend, and I just wanted to have a conversation with her on these Pride chats that the CW so generously provided for us, this platform, about the transgender experience in Hollywood, how she feels we're doing, and if we are, if she feels like we're moving forward, and all of that. So we are going to be taking questions, so please make sure to, here we are, here she is. So ask us whatever you want to ask, whatever you're curious about.
Hi!
Miss Ivory.
Chewy Bear said he wants to join in for a bit.
Absolutely. Hi, baby girl. How are you?
Hi, mi amor. I'm so good.
First of all, I miss you
bullets
so
a little, but call it a glow.
You look beautiful as always.
You look gorgeous.
Where are you?
I'm so well. How about yourself?
I'm great. Where are you right now?
Oh, where am I? I'm actually in Stamford, Connecticut, because Chewy Bear has been staying here with friends. I got stranded on the West Coast. I was in Austin. I was supposed to go to South by Southwest, and then it got canceled, but I had a flight from Austin to London for a film that I did in Europe. So I'm like, I'll go to Austin, but then the day before the flight got canceled. So from Austin, I just went to Phoenix to be with a cousin and friend. And I recently got back to the East Coast, and what a world we are in.
Yeah, I know.
How about you, love? Where are you?
I'm in Miami. I was wrapping up the season of Dynasty. We had 2 more episodes to go, and then the pandemic hit, and they sent us home. Last 2 episodes got canceled, and I spent the excuse me. I spent the first 5 weeks of the quarantine in Atlanta, and then I drove down to Miami, which is where my family is and where my boyfriend lives, and I've been here the whole time. It's actually gorgeous here, so it helps.
You're with your loved one. That's amazing.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for joining me and for wanting to do this. I love you.
I adore you. So it was amazing.
Yeah. We hit it off right away when we met each other. I want to just quickly let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and
sure.
Yeah.
Shall I dive in?
Yes, let's dive in. Where? So you're from the Philippines. Let's start there.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, before anything else, I'm Chewy Bear's mama. That is number one. But yes, I was born in the Philippines, and I, like yourself, am a first generation immigrant. I came here on an exchange program actually in high school, and funny story, I arrived in New York, and my host parents picked me up, and I'm so excited to be in New York. I was looking around and I was asking, where's the Empire State Building? Where's the Statue of Liberty? Because I was looking around and there were lots of cows. And they're like, oh, that's 8 hours south in New York City. I was in upstate New York. To me, growing up, New York was New York was New York. So
of course,
I learned something new that day. But yeah, needless to say, I got good SAT scores because I had nothing to do but study and eat Reese's peanut butter cups. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how I ended up in New York. And then eventually I got into Berklee College of Music, and I went to Boston to go there. And I had always wanted to act. That was my passion as a kid. When I was little, I would play under the table. I would make believe. And when I started transitioning, I just couldn't comprehend.
Which is what age was that?
At 16, I knew since I was 5. And you probably know about the Miss Universe pageant. You're from Venezuela. We are big pageant enthusiasts, right? So at 5 years old, I was watching the Miss Universe pageant, and I was amazed at how not only how beautiful these women were, but how eloquent and quick-witted. And I knew inside, I told myself, I want to be like them when I grow up. So I knew at 5. But at 16, I started my hormone therapy.
Here in the U.S.?
No, I started in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
And thankfully now there's access to medical care and what have you. But back then I did it all on my own. I went to the drugstore. I got birth control pills, and it was all like under the table.
Let's talk about that process. So you if we can just like briefly talk about that, because I want to talk about more about the industry and where we're at now. But just quickly, so you knew from the moment you were 5, but you kept it a secret, or was this like an open conversation with your parents?
At that age, I feel I didn't necessarily have words for it. It's just something that I knew. It's something I knew about myself. But, you know, as a kid, you go out in the playground and you just play, you do make believe. And the characters I would always want to portray were the fabulous female characters.
Yeah.
And so I didn't necessarily have words for my gender identity. I just knew who I was. But what's interesting is that's when the teasing happened. You know, you'd want to play. Yes, the teasing. I wanted to play this female character, and then I'd get looks or what have you. So that's when my awareness started to come in. But yeah, at that age, it was very innocent. It's just a knowing of who you are and wanting to have fun with the kids on the playground. And
when the bullying and the teasing started, you realized that this was something that you had to conceal and keep a secret, or did you power through?
In a nutshell, back then, I think I knew I liked boys. At the age when I was aware of who I was attracted to, I knew I liked boys. And back, you're told, you find out that the term for that, like I had no idea about being transgender or what have you. But in terms of attraction, I was attracted to boys. So then you find out, you get teased that you're gay, right?
Yeah.
But we know that gender identity and sexual orientation are 2 different things. But because I found myself attracted to boys and I was effeminate, I got
thought you were gay.
About being gay, which was a blanket statement. I finally took power when I was in the 5th grade at 10, when I really asked myself, okay, what does gay mean? Gay means that I am attracted to boys back then. So I said, okay. So then I looked at the bullies and I said, okay, so what if I am? Maybe you are too. There's nothing wrong with that, but maybe you are too. And then once I claimed power and actually let shame dissipate and not be part of my experience, that's when it turned around for me. But I'm curious about you. Did you have was it a similar age when you
I always knew, I mean, from a very young age, I always felt like what I felt inside of me was a little bit different than what was considered normal.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was very, very young, I mean, I'm probably like 5 or 4.
About the same age.
I always identified male, but I didn't have that separation of like, this is boy stuff and girl stuff, and I'm supposed to like boy stuff. Like, I liked everything. Like, I like to play with my girl cousins and play, you know, Barbies or whatever, and this and that, and I like to like play sports with my boy. And oh, we're back. So I didn't really have like a separation of that in my head. I had girl crushes, and I had I think back then more girl crushes than boy crushes, but for sure. But I mean, that's when I was like 4 or 5, and then I remember having like a situation with my dad where one of my older cousins, she's a girl and kind of like the leader when we were kids. She painted my nails, and I very proudly went to tell my dad, and my dad he was very upset and kind of yelled at me and said, "No, this is not, you know, that's for girls, and you're a boy, blah 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 blah." So that's the first moment where I felt shame and realized that it was wrong to that anything feminine or anything hypermasculine was wrong. But then, you know, when I became, you know, older in my teenage years, I started, you know, developing feelings for boys, and I immediately suppressed them. And I don't think I ever had like a conscious narrative in, you know, like I never really told myself you're gay or I'm gay, not even in my head. It was just I would suppress it until I was like 21 when I finally came out to myself, or 20. But yeah, anyway.
How did that feel? Then, do you have a distinct memory of that moment?
I was in college, and I was super depressed because you know, I knew that, you know, life wasn't working out for me. I already knew that. I mean, the way I was living my life was not authentic. I knew that, and it wasn't working. I didn't feel any joy, any happiness. I felt trapped. I felt like a small little shadow of myself, you know. And then you know, that's when YouTube happened, and it was kind of like the birth of social media. And so there was, you know, a lot more access to, you know, information and people's experiences, and vlogs started happening. So I started watching a lot of videos of people telling their coming out stories, and you know how I started, because I grew up in Venezuela, in my family, and where I grew up, there was no back in the, you know, late 90s and early 2000s, there was not, I didn't grow up around any gay people that I knew were out, and there was no representation of LGBTQ people in the media, or any righteous representation of LGBTQ people in the media. It was literally all mockery and you know, stereotypes and shells, and nothing real, nothing that you relate to, or nothing that is aspirational, that was aspirational in any way.
They were all vilified portrayals.
Yeah, vilified, and you know, ridiculed, and like characters that you would laugh at, not with. They were not the witty comedic relief that you laugh with. They were, you know, the character that you make fun of. So I didn't have anyone gay that I could, look up to, or who I could, look up to. And so finally, when a few years later, I was already in the US, I was already in college, I was about to graduate. And during a summer, I was taking summer classes. That was 2007. I was taking summer classes, and one day I started looking up videos of people in their coming out stories and telling their coming out stories and talking about community and blah, 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 blah. And I started seeing gay people, being happy, successful, telling, talking about things that I had felt. And so therefore I, started, well, A, felt less of an alien and not as alone. And B, I started seeing that it was possible to feel the way I felt and to be okay and to be successful and happy and have a family.
Absolutely.
And have
I think what you just said points to the importance of not feeling alone, because when like yourself, I felt I was different from what I was seeing around me. I would scour bookstores for even just for a book, and then I found a book, and that book was my best friend. I would hide it. It talked about sexual orientation, and those pages were a glimmer of hope for me, in the sense that I wasn't alone, really. And I think at the core, we are social beings, and what I love about Pride Month is the feeling that
community
together, and it's just a beautiful thing. And I want to share with you, a friend of mine had asked me recently. He was curious about why we celebrate Pride, whereas the straight community or the cisgender community doesn't necessarily have Pride Month for themselves. And it really got me thinking. And the answer that I was able to share with him, and I'm still open to seeing what comes to me, but the answer that I was able to share with him is that as kids, that lonely feeling of isolation was not pleasant, and and it would even lead to the notion of, am I wrong? And for a kid to think that, that's quite devastating. So I feel that pride is especially relevant and important for those who may not necessarily have a community just yet, who are in a small town where they don't see any reflection of themselves. As you said, growing up in the media, you did not see that. And because there's a designated month to be able to celebrate who one is, being LGBTQ, that in and of itself could be a lifesaver for someone who wouldn't know anything about the community otherwise. And until we all have equality, then I think Pride Month is a beautiful thing. And I'm so happy you asked me that question, because it really got me to reflect.
It is a beautiful thing. And as an oppressed minority, and as a minority that, for so long and still today in so many countries, and even in our country, is made to feel less and wrong and shamed so much. And so many of our kids, including ourselves at some point, had so much shame for being who we are. Pride Month is a celebration of exactly that, of it's almost it's a taking back our power as deserving individuals and as worthy individuals, and I think it's beautiful, and it's such it's one of my favorite times of the year, because it's such a celebration and it's so filled with love and everything. Let's look at some of these talking points.
Yeah, Rafael, before we move on to those exciting things
tell
we
me.
have prepared, I just had a thought in terms of Pride. Of course, it's for members of the LGBTQ community, but I feel as well that it's for their families, our friends, our allies. because the story of one's journey in terms of coming to inhabit being LGBTQ is as much a story of families as well as an individual.
Of course.
And it's so beautiful to see this bigger community of allies, families, friends of the LGBTQ community coming together during this time. Because at the end of the day, whether one's sexual orientation is different from another one's or gender identity, and I have said this before, we all share the desire to dream, the desire to love and to be loved, to live meaningful lives. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, that's what makes us a human community. And Pride is such a beautiful manifestation of that, of people coming together, celebrating each other, celebrating being there, present with each other. So yeah, it's just a thought that stuck with me as we were talking about Pride. But yes, we can get to your
no, I love that. I love what you're saying. I absolutely love what you're saying. I totally agree. Okay. There has been a lot more visibility, trans visibility, in the media in the past couple of years, specifically with Pose. That has been such a huge, monumental moment for our community, and specifically for the trans community and the trans community of color. Do you feel, okay, so this is a question that I was wondering, as a trans woman, do you feel like the visibility that we have had over the past couple of years, you know, Laverne being on the cover of Time magazine, and, you know, the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable with the trans actors, and, you know, all of the noise that is happening around the trans experience, do you feel like that have you felt a difference in your daily life as a trans woman? Has it translated? Do you feel like the conversation happening in the media has in any way, you know, educated the people? Have you felt any difference in your life?
I, for one, upon reflection, I actually realized that in my day-to-day life, there's this sense of calmness and serenity that may not have been there before. Mm-hmm. In the sense of, if someone found out that I was trans, I feel that there's this seedbed for us to have a conversation. Whereas before this visibility started happening, there wouldn't be this baseline understanding from which to build. There would, like you said, in the past, depictions in the media were not pleasant. And it almost would be impossible to navigate a decent conversation, first having to unpack that, and then upon that, move forward with useful conversation. In that sense, I have seen that subtle change within myself. I recognize that I do have privilege in the sense that I may not be perceived as transgender. And I want to clarify that I don't see that as an advantage or as a good thing. It may be an advantage in a certain sense, but I personally don't feel that it's necessarily a good thing, in the sense that within the trans community itself, there's such diversity. And for me, there's not one way to look trans, or there's not a definition. Each person's journey is very singular to themselves, and wherever one is in their transition, and even the term transition can be a blanket statement, because each person may have,
because you can be a trans woman and still, and you were, so growing up, before you started your transition, you were a trans woman. That's what you were.
Yes,
before transitioning. So your transition doesn't make you
it doesn't validate one.
The hormones or the surgeries or whatever process you go through or choose to go through doesn't define your gender.
Exactly.
It is a psychological what do we call it? A psychological situation.
It's identity. It's how one
It's identity.
knows
It's a
about
psychological identity. Yes.
It's how one knows
Yes,
about themselves, and yes, how one feels most comfortable and how they transition is part of their expression and their journey and their lives. And so Laverne has said this beautifully. She has this hashtag, trans is beautiful. And I love that because there's nothing there that says post-op trans is beautiful, which even that is an outdated term, I feel. But there's nothing, it's just trans is beautiful. And and what I love about that is I feel that validates one's experience wherever they are in their journey. And personally, the reason I felt that I had to, in a sense, years ago, be perceived as cisgender was really for survival.
I wanted to talk about that. I want to dive into that because I remember you told me that when I met you in 2016, it hadn't been long since you had made the decision to come out as transgender. So you decided to live your life, you know, to put it in a term, in the closet. You know, you were living
privately.
You were living, because I'm sure you felt like you were more safe. You were safer.
Absolutely.
That way. And do you think that was also, or I'm asking you, what was that also because you were afraid that you wouldn't get work as an actor if you came out? And do you think that has that changed since?
It's more elemental than that. Actually, when we met in 2016, I hadn't publicly disclosed yet. That happened a few months later in January for the press, for the TCA panel of When We Rise in California. Oh, by the way, for viewers out there who may not know, Rafael and I met on this wonderful project called When We Rise that Dustin Lance Black created. And among the many blessings that project has bestowed upon me, one has been to meet you, Rafael. Yes, just to give some background on that. But I think it was more elemental than that. Even before my wanting to pursue an acting career, when I was transitioning and I was in high school, I would just go out to the mall and get looks. And it was so uncomfortable. Like the simple things that people may take for granted, like having a relaxing stroll in the mall or going to have a bite at a restaurant with a friend. It was just so exacerbated by people looking at me without even knowing me, without knowing who I was, without even speaking any sort of word of acknowledgement. It was simply based on judgment and based on looks and based on the notion that I did not fit into what they perceived was normal. So for me, the desire to be able to just walk out the front door and navigate my day like any cisgender person would, that was the driving force. I think that really wanted me to just be perceived as cisgender or blend in. And thankfully now the world is changing, because what that points to is that there was nothing wrong with me. It had to do with perception and how we got to perception, how that was propagated, like you said, in the media, and how we were portrayed. So I'm really thankful for this time and this conversation, actually, and that we have people who want to be supportive and who want to learn and who want to enrich their knowledge of our community. Did you
absolutely
did you have any sense for yourself these past few years with more representation that things have changed as you navigate your everyday life? I'm just curious as to your experience.
Yes. Well, I'm fully out. I've been out since I was 2021. I'm 33 now. But I started my career in TV in Latin America when I was 23 or 24, around there. And even though I was out with, my family and friends, I decided not to, to keep it to myself in the media and social media and at work. I didn't tell anyone. Because I felt like if I came out, I wouldn't have the career that I wanted to have as an actor, and I wouldn't get as much work, and I would be limited. So I was in the closet for a long time, and then Empire happened, and I feel like that was 2014. I feel like there was a shift in that year, that I feel like it really started with Prop 8, which was, I think, 2011. And then, in 2014, I did Empire, and I played, a gay character in a mainstream show that had a gigantic ratings. And that gave me massive exposure. And I started getting a lot of DMs from fans in social media telling me how much they appreciated the fact that I was out there and, playing a gay character, and that they felt represented and that they felt part of the conversation. And I realized in that moment that I was being for other people what I needed growing up. So a lot of the fear and a lot of the shame started to dissipate. And my perception of reality started to shift, as well as the fact that because there was more representation and there were more of us on the screen, and there started to be this like awakening in the media. It was both me feeling a deeper sense of pride and how my work was more than just about me, or the implications of what I was doing were bigger than me, along with a shift in society. And that has just kept moving in that direction. And then finally, I didn't publicly say that I was gay until, so when that happened, when all of this happened in 2014, 2015, I came out to everyone at work, and I was a lot more open with everyone that I worked with. And then I publicly came out in the media, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago or something, with Dynasty. Because I had a specific moment where a reporter asked me, because even in When We Rise, I didn't like deny that I was gay, but I didn't fully, verbalize and talk about it in the way that I do now. So I didn't publicly acknowledge it, but there was a moment where a reporter asked me, okay, so you've done Empire, When We Rise, and Dynasty. These three characters are very similar. Do you ever feel any fear that you are going to be pigeonholed in these types of characters? And I was like, wow, these three characters, the only thing that they have in common is their sexuality. The rest of their personality is vastly different. Their experiences, everything is completely different. So you're boiling down the entirety of what these people are, or what a human is, to their sexuality. I highly doubt that happens to my straight counterparts. I don't think that a straight actor playing straight roles ever gets asked, because he has played a myriad of straight roles, that if they ever fear that they're going to be pigeonholed because they've only played straight roles. So that kind of like ignited this fire in me, where I was like, you know what? No, because there's a world of different characters that I can play within, gay. There's all different kinds of gay men that I could play, just like straight men. And you would never ask that to a straight person. And if anything, I am incredibly proud to bring visibility to my community. So, you know, that happened, and I fully, like, completely came out publicly, and I'm super out. I mean, I post pictures with my boyfriend, I talk about it, I advocate. And I
what
feel
what a contribution you have
and
brought.
but I feel like it has been both my outlook and my output, just as far as like my energy and what I focus my attention on, along with the open conversation we have in the media and the education that we're providing in the media, as far as, you know, the queer experience. Yes. So it's been there has been a shift in you know, the common consciousness, but also in my perspective and my view. You know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I'm trapped in a little box of fear.
Exactly. And to be able to inspire change, we really start within ourselves.
Well, we have to be agents of change. If we want change to happen, we have to lead it. We have to be, you know, at the forefront, and we have to make it happen. We can't sit and wait for change to happen.
Absolutely. And, you know, a thought that came to my mind now is, with the current climate we have, where a lot of hate is being unearthed, I feel, amongst the many things that are contributing to this environment, I feel that, just to tie in with what we were talking about, this fostering of hatred wouldn't be possible in someone who has such self-love for themselves. So I feel that it's an inside job first, before it can spread. So yes, and I feel the best way that one can be an example of self-love is to be proudly themselves and to claim power and ownership of that.
Absolutely, but that can only happen when you can see yourself represented in the media, where you can see yourself as part of the conversation and as a real, you know, human in this earth. I watched Disclosure, the Netflix documentary about the trans representation in Hollywood, and it was incredibly informative. And there was this fact. According to a study by GLAAD, 80% of Americans don't know someone who is transgender. Most of the information that Americans get about transgender people comes from the media. Not only the non-transgender people, but also trans people get most of their information from the media. And it's the same with, you know, trans, but also a lot with gay people. And that's why representation is so important, because in order for you to feel, you know, proud, in order for you to feel deserving, in order for you to feel important and valuable, you have to feel part of the conversation, part of society. You have to feel like you matter. And that can only happen if you matter, if you are part of the conversation, if you turn on the TV and you see yourself reflected on there. So I wanted to ask you, just on these terms, on this line of thought, society, we know that society is set up in a way that it puts white cis men ahead. As an immigrant, non-white, transgender woman, how do you take your power back? What in your environment and within yourself do you cling to take your power back from a world that is set up to put other people ahead?
So first, thank you for stating the statistic about the 80%, but it's interesting. when I heard that, what occurred to me is there are people out there who may not necessarily know that they already know a trans person or someone who's gay. They may very well be neighbors with someone who's trans or gay and may even have a very pleasant relationship, may be even sharing meals and having dinners in each other's homes without necessarily knowing that information. And what
Yeah.
that points towards is that at the end of the day, regardless of what the labels are, trans, gay, or what have you, we're all part of the same human community.
Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning that with more positive representation in the media, that reflections of us are being made more available so that we do feel less alone and more part of something larger. And with more representation, that number, that statistic, hopefully will go down. So
Yeah.
we are moving forward, because I believe a few years ago the statistic was higher. So thankfully, some change is happening with the work that you are doing, with the work that other amazing
that you are doing, being so bravely out and proud and doing it. It's important. It's important for our trans girls and guys out there to feel like they have you know, people like you out there putting a face to the community and taking that dangerous and dangerous stigma out and educating people.
Thank you. And to answer the question you had about
how do you take your power back?
I can only speak for myself in terms of what I do. I personally, for myself, don't buy into the notion that I do not have power. Because once I claim the power within myself, and when I say that, it's recognizing the things that I can change, the things that I have control over. And a lot of what I have control over actually is perception, is my perception. And I try to practice what I preach in terms of being more open-minded, being more compassionate. When I come across judgment that I feel is stirring in me towards something I don't understand, I literally take pause and I tell myself, Ivory, give yourself the opportunity to perceive this differently and understand it, rather than just seeing it in a myopic way. So so I try to claim power where I know I have it, and I have found, based on my experience, that that power multiplies. It just grows, because then you come across people who have the same desires to inhabit equality. And I feel you and I, part of our mission and our work is to promote equality. And thankfully, it's moving that direction. The needle is moving forward. With what's happening around the world, we have these stories that are tragic, but the usefulness of these stories won't go down in vain, is the fact that they are pointing this spotlight into the issues, into the problems that are wanting solutions. And it's the solutions to these problems that I personally feel we now can focus on, having conversations like this and bringing understanding. So we are in this time that is ripe with hope, because I feel that at no point in history was there more open ears, open-mindedness, people willing to listen and to take responsibility where they fall in this cycle of pain, and to want to break free of the cycle. So it's really an opportune time. And that is what I'm hopeful for, and that is what I am really wanting to focus on.
Amazing. Let me ask you, since you came out in 2017, January 2017?
Yes. Since
you publicly came out as transgender, do you still go out for cis roles as well as trans roles, and do you feel like there are more roles, trans feminine roles out there?
Yes, I'm very fortunate in this in the sense of having amazing representatives, because the answer to that is yes. I've done, I think, 7 projects since When We Rise, and out of those 7 projects, two roles were trans. The other roles were either cisgender, or I call them non-gender specific, because this thought came to me.
Which is the goal. I feel like the goal is to play non-gender specific roles. You know what I mean?
And what I found fascinating is I was reading a script one day and I found myself assuming, if there was no mention of gender identity or sexual orientation, that the people I was reading about were either straight or cisgender. And I gave myself this exercise of imagining, with the script I was reading, that I went into the assumption that actually everyone was either trans or gender fluid or not straight, either pansexual or gay or bi, because I was realizing the reason we have that assumption when we read these scripts is precisely because in the media you have had these representations. And I told myself, you know what, I can claim power right now by actually assuming the opposite, by assuming that everybody in this world of the script that I was reading is part of the queer experience. So that was a fun exercise that I just gave myself. But yes, the projects that I've done since When We Rise, out of the 7, and 5 were either cisgender or, as I say, non-gender specific. I was able to do these roles because my reps are amazing. I feel that they have not put me in a box, that they see me for what I can bring to the table in terms of what I can bring to story and my skill set. And at the same time, I feel that casting directors and producers and writers have been allies in terms of deciding to cast me in a cisgender role or what have you. And I am very thankful for our allies in the sense that we all want to be able to expand the industry's notions and the industry's perceptions.
And the world. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been very fortunate in that sense. And the reason I also have been starting to call a role that's not necessarily trans, non-gender specific, is because it points to what I was saying earlier. Just because I'm reading a script and there's no mention that this person is trans, first of all, it would be presumptuous to think that they're not trans, just to assume that they're cisgender, just because there's no mention of that. So this character can be anything if there's no mention of gender identity. They either can be cisgender or transgender or gender fluid or what have you. Of course,
we
as
grow
actors
up
at their gender expression, right? And being detectives when we mind it.
Absolutely. And
so,
it's that exercise. First of all, I want to say it's brilliant, but also it's great for dissipating the false notion that we grow up with, that all identities revolve around cis, or wait, no, that all sexes revolve around cis, that all sexualities revolve around heterosexualities, that all races, I don't like the word race, but all races revolve around whiteness, that, you know what I mean? It's like, we don't have to assume people are cis. We don't have to assume people are straight. We don't have to, that doesn't have to be the default. You know what I mean?
And you know what? I mean, I did a project. I did this project where I was pregnant. So when I did that role, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm cisgender. And I've been fortunate enough to like do Shakespeare roles where there's no doubt that they were cisgender. Like Lady Macbeth makes mention of having had a child. So in my mind, there's that. And when I played Juliet and I was just imagining her backstory, actually, you know what? In this moment, I'm actually reconsidering. I'm like, maybe she could be trans. But like when I played her, to me, she was a cisgender girl. But now what's lovely about these things is that we have this wealth of knowledge at our hands, and it makes the world we are inhabiting as actors and actresses more interesting, because it is reflecting the fascination and the interest of the world at large. Because what we're really doing is just reflecting what has been the case all along. Transgender people and gay people, non-binary people have existed all this time. It's not like we just popped up when Laverne showed up on the cover and was facing the cover of Time. Thank you for bringing visibility. But prior to that, we have existed.
And let's talk about that. Who was the first trans person in the media that you remember seeing? And was it a negative depiction, or was it a you know, how, so,
it was. I mean, it was so far removed from who I was that I didn't even identify with this person, even though they were trans. And the beauty of having done that is now we can look back and say, no more. Now we're ready for portrayal of who reflect who we really are.
Real, honest portrayals in truthful lights.
Yes, and it's not just members of the community who won't stand for that anymore. I feel as we're being more educated as an industry, we have people who are in a producing position, or who write the scripts, who are now able to infuse their projects with authenticity and with a desire to be open and to learn more. So I think that's an important step for all. Yes, and we're moving in that direction.
I'm ready for more trans people in positions of power. I want more trans decision makers. I want more trans creatives and directors and writers and showrunners.
And let me just share, because you said positions of power, let me just share to our view, like anyone who's watching who may be part of the trans experience or the other experience, let's claim our power ourselves individually first. Look in the mirror when you wake up and see how beautiful you are. See that what have in the past been perceived as flaws are the things that make us beautiful and human. And from there, then we can emerge in the world as these beautiful human beings, just hopeful for a world that is more loving and more giving, and just more open to diversity and the beauty of diversity.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you 3 questions, and you're gonna answer them with just one word. They're quick questions.
Okay.
What are you afraid of?
What am I afraid of? Static. Is there a word for static? Staticness. Stasis? I'm gonna look that up.
Static, but what do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand.
And you know, I say that flippantly because I know there's nothing that the world isn't going to remain static. The thought of that,
stillness, or
no, not stillness, or like the notion that something is, there's no room for improvement in something, there's no room for growth. Okay. So I say that almost, I say that knowing that that's not going to be the case, that change is inevitable, change is the only thing that's constant, and we are moving into a better place, a better world. So
okay, what gives you hope?
Oh, one word, can I hyphenate it? Playing animals. Because when I go on my walks and I watch these squirrels play or these birds play, I'm thinking, you know what? If those animals can play, we human beings can certainly like release any sort of things that block our minds.
Tension, everything. Yeah. Playfulness. What makes you blush?
Oh my God! One word?
Oh wow! You don't have to. You don't have to answer it in one.
You know what really makes me blush? When someone I think is cute flirts unexpectedly. Yeah, there's no turning back. I just blush, and that's it. Wait, I want to ask
Ivory.
you, do we have a minute for me to ask you
Yes.
3 questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I may alter them a little. So what makes you want to wake up in the morning?
Coffee.
I would say bubble tea, but yes. Okay,
you know what? I love one word.
Okay, sure.
Purpose. Purpose.
Ooh, I love you. You're amazing. Okay, what what makes you fall asleep peacefully at night?
Wow. Cuddling. Cuddling.
Oh yes. And
I'm taking a while to think of these words, but anyway.
I know, right? But it's fun, right? And what parting words do you want to share, not just with me, but whoever listened to this conversation?
You are beautiful. You are worthy. You are deserving. You are here. You are real. You are capable of anything you put your mind to. And the most important thing in life, the most important thing in life, and the most important thing you can think of or do is to love and to feel love for yourself and for our brothers and sisters out there and for the planet. And yeah, love is the most important thing. Choose
because
love.
We are love. We are love.
We are love. I love you, Ivory. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me. It was supposed to be, the CW told me 25, 30 minutes. We ended up chatting for an hour, but this was so great. I love you so much. Thank you for doing this. Trans pride, gay pride, love for everyone. Love wins. Choose love. Bye-bye.
Yes. Yes. Ciao, babe.
Ciao, my love.